And Amnesty International says it has documented at least 17 cases of mass abductions in which at least 1,700 children were seized from their schools by gunmen and taken into unknown destinations where in many cases they were subjected to serious abuse, including rape. Investigations by Amnesty International reveal that the state of education in Chibok and its surrounding communities are still being impacted by the 2014 abductions. And according to reports, the Borno state government rebuilt the government girls' secondary school in Chibok, which was completely razed down by Boko Haram back in 2014. And they've set up a day secondary school and a technical school in Chibok. However, academic activities in the schools remain minimal because parents are still skeptical of having their kids go back to school for fear of being abducted by Boko Haram. Our Arise analyst, Dr. Sam Amadi, joins me now from our Abuja studios to speak on the welfare of the rescued Chibok schoolgirls, also on the allegations of their forced marriage to Boko Haram repentance, also how to effectively try to reintegrate them into society and to reconcile them with their families. It's always good to have you on the show. Good afternoon, Dr. Amadi.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Well, in light of this story, which is quite upsetting, let me just get into the most alarming of these incidents. Apparently, the forced marriage of some of these Chibok schoolgirls. About 20 schoolgirls allegedly were married off to repentant Boko Haram terrorists, and the ceremony was provided and paid for allegedly by the Borno state government. This is all in this report by the Amnesty International. What do you make of this? Like, what could have possibly been their reasoning for such?
Well, thank you very much for having me. First, I think it's important to start by saying that since 10 years after the incident, there has been several allegations, usually by international or international-related human rights and organizations and journalists. I mean, there was a report about 3 to 4 years ago around alleged abortion, forced abortion by Nigerian military against this in the Chibok area. I happen to have got a copy of the transcript from the agency, the international media/human rights organization, requesting the former president, then Jonathan Goodluck, to respond to what he knew about allegations of military high command, some of them allegedly involved in these practices. And of course, I got a transcript of the president's own response, former president, denying he never knew this. Now, the Amnesty International comes with this bombshell. And so the key thing is that, look, there seems to be a lack of national auditing. That's the critical thing here, of what happened in Chibok and what keeps happening. It just also, and ironically, the champions of Bring Back Our Girls, who also came on air, Arise News did a great job, highlighting the 10 years and the game and the search is still on about what happened. But again, these activists have not put the Nigerian government subsequently under some kind of searchlight to say, what are you doing about this? So, yeah, they were very clear in attacking the Jonathan administration for its failing to respond on time, but have been very, very indifferent to these allegations of what happened afterwards, what's happened to these, young girls, these hapless ladies who are now in prison or in detention and held hostage by Boko Haram, and allegations of those who are now being forcefully married. So first, it's a national shame that our national institutions are not involved in creating searchlight on what's happening. The National Human Rights Commission is there. It ought to be leading in investigating, confirming, or denying in evidence-based way this allegation. There are weighty allegations of state malpractices where state government, work to, force these victims themselves to get married to their violators. I mean, that's as horrible. That's a fundamental violation of their dignity, and that breaches the responsibility of the state. So, assuming it is true, it speaks to complicity that dates from the origin of this attack. I mean, the Jonathan government weakly, maybe incompetently, did not focus on the fact that the government of Borno State at that point had serious questions to answer as to the management of the school, with respect to the warning, as to how these ladies were taken. People forget the stories from eyewitness and some of those who escaped, as to the fact that they were quartered for days and weeks in a notable place in Borno, and there were no military effort, there were no issues around taking them out. So now that the state is also organizing some kind of de-radicalization, reconciliation, and being alleged to be forcing these obnoxious marriages happening, the question then is, why is the national institution not working? Again, the Attorney General of the Federation. This is an instance where the Attorney General of the Federation should appoint an independent investigator, what we call independent counsel, a special counsel in the U.S. Administrative law language, to go and investigate and see how much state institutions, state agencies, whether the military or the government themselves, are involved in perpetrating and continuing these very extreme form of violation of rights. I'm back to the question as to why this. I think there is a certain state-based violence here, and the notion that the Nigerian state has mainstreamed religious sentiment to the point that it fails always to uphold the human rights, the rule of law, the human rights of citizens, and rule of law. So there is some complicity arising from the way that the Nigerian state at different levels have got so mainstream in religious sentiment that it condones and sometimes it facilitates this violation of rights on the name of religion.
I think that's a very good way to put it, Dr. Amadi. And in the classic case of Stockholm Syndrome, where individuals who fall in love with their captors or feel some kind of feelings for their captors, it seems that's what's happening with many of these girls, because there are separate incidences of individuals or young girls who are living in this rehabilitation camp that the government has set up for them, and they have been complaining about wanting to go back to the forest, to the fields, to reunite with their own terrorists, possible fathers of their children or people that they left behind, which Absolutely. Just goes to show that there's no counseling or rehabilitation on the side of the females, even after they have been released. Absolutely. So with all this talk of keeping Absolutely. The girl child safe and being very concerned about it, what could be done to better reorientate these girls? Because right now, as they have them in a holding facility, quote unquote, they're away from their families, and some Absolutely. Of them are complaining, and maybe they don't have the right care that they need, even though the government has provided for them. What more could the government be doing in terms of their mental welfare?
I think, look, the critical thing here is, first, is to understand that what happened to these kids, they're now children, and now maybe young adults, is shattering. No, you don't expect these guys to form good opinion in terms of, there's something we call false consciousness. Yes, people can love their captivity, people can seem to be in love with their oppression, but that's false consciousness arising from very, catastrophic, event in their life. So you don't expect these kids taken to the forest, abducted from their family, and now they have babies, indoctrinated, brutalized, several things you can imagine. And then somebody says, you know what, they are in love with this guy. So that's false. That's false. That's what the state should have done, and that's the problem. And like I said, it's ideologically codified in the behavior of the Nigerian state. Its romance with religion and its privileging of religious sentiment disables the state from effectively doing what it ought to do. First is accountability. The notion of rehabilitation, all this nonsense about getting people who are criminals, who are terrorists, basically, rehabilitated, has not gone through a scientific proof. Basically, that first they're at a point where you first convict them, indict them of crime crime against humanity, and then they somehow, turn around, restitute and renounce, then process, de-radicalize, and so on. There is no rigor to this process of rehabilitation at all. Again, you should, as much as possible, isolate them from these young ladies. Whether they have 10 children, these people are violated, and so there should have been an isolation and quick, rehabilitation. We need to see the curriculum. I mean, what scientific psychological or scientific model is being administered to rehabilitate and turn them away from the harm, and as quickly take them back to their family. You see, the rehabilitation should be that they are back to their family in a mental and psychological state in which they can recreate their life. Why is a young lady in America who is doing a PhD at Berkeley is not fantasizing about, going to the Boko Haram? Because her life, she was able to retrieve herself and is able to recreate herself and understand what has happened to them. So these ladies need to be managed psychologically in a way that they understand what has happened to them and reject what has happened to them and recreate their life again. And the best way to do that is to quickly get them back to their family. So the whole idea of rehabilitation should be quick and should focus on getting them back to where they were before. And that's really the problem. I think that, in my sense, we've not seen real clarity as what this process of rehabilitation entails, and definitely it shouldn't entail estranging them from their family and cementing whatever relationship you think they have with these terrorists, actually, who kidnapped and brutalized them. That's reverse. That's perverse. The Nigerian state should not be facilitating any supposed marriage or long-term relationship between terrorists who violated kids, with those kids now, living with them and their family not being in touch with them. I think there's something wrong with the ideology of and the orientation of the rehabilitation, and that's what we are seeing. I mean, again, look at allegations that Amnesty International has presented. Look at the ones that has been presented in the past. How has the Nigerian state, gone in to investigate, to verify and confirm, and say we can establish this degree of violation? And that's why the Nigerian state is full of impunity. I mean, historically, whether it's Gideon Kaloka, whether it's different killings, everything that happened in this country is shrouded in impunity. We don't really, when we happen to get foreign report about them, which institution in Nigeria, whether it's Human Rights Commission, whether it's the Minister of Justice, that sits back and verify and audit the process and come out with a clear report that says, this is true, this is not true, and this is intervention to deal with this violation. So here you have state government being accused of being, complicit in perpetuating this very psychological ruination of young kids who should be supposed to be in school. And if you even ask how much is being done to rebuild the social psychological infrastructure of that community of Chibok, to recreate and empower them to now not live in fear. I mean, if you look at the report, read very carefully, the people who testified don't want to be mentioned because they could be victims of attack by both the Boko Haram people as well as the state government itself. So there's really massive violation of human rights, not just at the level of the abduction of this case, but the continuing, violation of their dignity, their agency, and their rights as Nigerian citizens, and the failure of state institutions to audit and report and declare and remediate whatever it is that's going wrong in the context of managing those who are out and those who are still held as captives.
It's completely insane to think that you would marry these girls off to the very same captors who took them in the first place under the guise
Absolutely.
of them being reformed. It is unconscionable, and I really, really feel for those girls and their families. But you were talking about impunity, which seems to be the key word for a lot of these systems within our government, as we know that. When these Chibok girls were first abducted, the whole world was, collectively clutching their pearls. Like, how can over almost 300 children just go missing overnight, only to jump to this year, where the report says over 780 children have been abducted in just 1 year alone. It's like we're used to it. Unfortunately, we're desensitized. The first time it happens, everyone is just can't believe it. The second, third, fourth time, it's almost routine. How is this even possible to retrain the minds of us Nigerian individuals who see these calamities that go on every day or every week, and it seems a lot of proclamations are made and not much is being done?
I think it has to be an integrative work. I mean, the media is doing its bits, but maybe we should do more. Not just report this news, but report with a commentary that show how sordid, how brutalizing, degrading these are. So we shouldn't be reporting these figures as just news. Okay, 6 children, 6 city school kids kidnapped in Sokoto or wherever, or Calabar or Aba, wherever it is. We should be reported with a deepening of the context of how life is now brutish, short, and nasty. How the Nigerian state, deliberately or otherwise, fails to protect the right to life. Again, we should also see rearmament, moral rearmament. It looks like these tragedies have a corrosive effect, corrodes our moral sensitivity. And so you see, for example, we're talking about terrorists demanding 1 billion, 10 billion for ransom. We talk about people being beheaded, whether it's in the southeast or south or north central, everywhere. We even see ragtag insurgents, killing people and cannibalism. So it looks like somehow there's a slippery slope where we are moving from being desensitized to become totally, if you like, savage, becoming savages. I mean, that's a way the Nobel laureate in economics, William Gordon, talked about it in The Lord of the Flies. British kids who came from the best public schools, from the best families, and went on a picnic and got shipwrecked somewhere. And then they were marooned in that island. And somehow these great British kids turned into vandals and savages, killing themselves until the Marines come. So the lesson is very clear. Whenever there's a collapse of order, good governance, wherever government seems, things can happen and people get away with it, it gradually destroys sensibilities. It kind of desensitizes people, and before you know it, we can now become even complicit to this level of savagery. So we are now in a society where life don't count. So you see every day people are brutalized, that police killed this person or that person killed, and the notion that 10 people were killed with no justification doesn't really strike us as, look, wait a minute, what's going on here? And we don't even see the justice system rise up relentlessly, intensely, to prosecute those who take others' life. So what that creates for you is impunity, is generalized loss of value for human life. And so if you place that side by side with our constitutional commitment to the right to life of all Nigerian citizens, and ask yourself, how much resources has the federal government or state government put in tracking those who have taken the life of other citizens in whatever guise, in the guise of fighting for a republic, IPOB, or whatever they call, or Yoruba nation, in the guise of religious freedom? We saw what happened with Deborah. How much is the Sokoto Minister of Justice really prosecuting, establishing that, look, we view the life of Deborah so important that we cannot take the nonsense of somebody claiming blasphemy. Do you see any sense that the Nigerian state really cares about the life of its citizens above some religious or ethnic or ideological, proposition by people? Even political confidences override. And we saw what happened even to the election in Lagos State. After the election, has INEC done any audit? Has people said how many people were violated because they couldn't vote, or they were stopped, or they were beaten or killed? We basically do no audit because we don't really give any damn, or we don't care about human life in this country. The idea of citizenship right, as we talk about it, is hollow and deceptive, because the measure of this right is the resources that the nations put to protect them. And that's why a famous Stephen Holmes talked about the cost of rights. Rights have cost. You invest in police, in judiciary, you invest in prevention, you invest in prosecution, so that those who violate those rights pay a price. And that's how citizens begin to get back the notion that these rights really matter. So if you can kidnap young ladies and get them missing for years, and then you get rewarded with a position in government or a position in civic life because, quote unquote, you have been reformed, how are you signaling to other people that they cannot arbitrarily take other people into hostages? If somebody gets killed, you kill citizens and people kill them in whatever pursuit of any ideology, whether they are fighting for independence or whatever, and those people can walk free. How are you signaling to citizens that the life of citizens matters? So, in a nutshell, the failure of the Nigerian state to be a state that truly protects lives, a state that respects the life of each citizen, is what has built back to this generalized sense of impunity and loss of value for human life. And that's tragic that we're counting numbers run to thousands of kidnaps, of abductions, of young children, and we can't really strenuously, we cannot seriously really, try to say, let's get these children safe. I mean, we talk about the safe school system, the fact that the financing, most of these schools have no walls. So if in a place as Kaduna, you know that in the northern Nigeria, these are target area, I still have schools with no walls. Does that mean that putting a wall is so expensive? It simply means that the elites have no respect or care that these kids can be taken. It's number game. So if they take them, well, we'll make a speech and we'll continue. Otherwise, the first priority will be to provide walls, at least do some prevention, create some difficulty to access these kids and take them hostage. But everywhere, you see porous schools because we really don't care much about the life of those young boys and girls.
It's a total disintegration of the social contract. It's an unfortunate situation that we hope gets better, as we always say with things in this country. Dr. Amadi, it's always good to have you on the program. Thank you so much for having this discussion with me today.